Welcome to WDND Roleplay Radio Podcast. My name's Cliff.
Hello, y'all. My name is Jason, and we are here once again. And we'll be your host for our discussions of all things RPG and occasional tangents into other areas of geek culture.
Today, we're going to be talking about something that many players of Dungeons and Dragons and many other role-playing games are very familiar with, and that is pets. Everything from the familiar that many arcane casters can get to the animal companions that the more primal casters might bring with them on adventures.
No, that's not our topic today. It was about pet peeves, not pets.
Oh, thank God. I thought we were going to have to spend 30 minutes talking about owls or ravens. See, this is kind of what you're talking about, people not reading into things closely enough.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. But we also have our friend to the show, Steve, has joined us this week for our discussion about all things pet peeves. So how you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us. So, with our actual topic being pet peeves, we're going to turn right into that conversation and we're going to talk about some of the things that drive people crazy, not just in Dungeons and Dragons, but in gaming in general. And, this can be stuff that happens in the game, or it can just be things that surround the game, the actions of the players, kind of like outside of the actual time at the table or your virtual tabletop, rolling dice or running the algorithms, and you know who I'm talking. So, just to get the conversation started, I'm going to reach into the bag and pull out one of our topics. And the first thing that I'm going to go on about is the conundrum of non-optimized characters versus just maxed out concepts. And it would seem like these two things are on two opposite sides of the spectrum. So why would you roll them into the same thing? Because both of them hit me really hard, because I love to min-max a character, but I also like to make sure I have plenty of story backing up that crazy selection of abilities. I don't want to just create a perfectly mathematically crafted block of skills and abilities and totally disregard all of the other like story and world things that can go into the character. So if it's just a maxed out character concept, like you watched a YouTube video specifically about how to power build that one thing, and you didn't think at all about, well, which area of this world did your ranger train into so and so? That is bad to me. But on the exact same time, people don't make a character that is good at their job, like really, really low intelligence wizard, or a fighter that doesn't have decent physical attributes of some point to back up their weapon skills. Like, those things drive me nuts too.
Steve, you about to say something?
Go ahead, Steve.
I was thinking of the game that we all played in where my wizard was the not skills monkey, but the knowledge guy, because the cleric of the party didn't have any ranks in knowledge religion. He
I
needed
noticed
that for his cleric to be effective. Everyone was, or not everyone was counting on him, but people expected him to be able to like do his job. It was, if he had so many ranks in it under the 3-5 setting, he got bonuses for it. And not once in that entire game did he ever bother building up a basic building block of his character. That's poorly optimized in my opinion, but to him it was a role playing thing.
And that's the thing. You have to have some kind of a balance between the two, in my opinion. Coming from the time when I was learning the game, I was back in the 80s, D&D was the thing. And we just made characters like every day because we just rolled dice and put the stats wherever and tried to make the best characters with the rolls that we got and that kind of thing. But it evolved into having a bit more, you have to have a bit more substance, I think, with your characters, as far as making sure that they are a viable character that can survive more than one or two adventures. And I get that as well.
Yeah. Unless you roll low stats, suicides happen.
Yeah,
that's a pet peeve.
That's a pet peeve.
That's a pet peeve when people decide to try to play the character that they've rolled with the crappy rolls they got. And yes, sometimes it's nice when you can make lemonade out of lemons. But then if you roll something that's pretty decent and you still don't think it's good enough and you decide to just try and go out of your way to have your character killed over some stupid shit, that's a pet peeve.
Well, I mean, you could just let them make something else.
Yeah.
But you don't.
But sometimes I don't.
But that's a cross you have to bear. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is metagaming, and there's different levels of metagaming because, like, let's be straight up. If you're coming to the GM or the party and you ask the question, "What does the group need?" That question is metagaming. It is, because you're looking for input that has nothing to do with the information that you're receiving in the game to influence what you do. And this is character creation in the game. If there was absolutely no metagaming at all, everybody would just pick what they wanted to without any contact with each other, and the GM would go, "Yes, sure," and then secretly he could be screaming, "We don't need a seventh mage." That is metagaming. But the metagaming everybody thinks about is when somebody goes, "Well, we're going to be fighting trolls, so everybody better memorize something with fire magic."
Right.
So,
or acid,
that, or if people go, checking out a module that's, already been written and just glance through some things, and all of a sudden, their characters know what's behind door number 3.
Oh my God, who would do that?
I don't know.
Anybody? Forums are, with the age of the internet, sometimes it's very difficult not to be exposed to information.
Oh, please, Steve. I was trying to call you out directly. I know you've got a bookshelf full of modules and stuff from previous game editions.
I've seen your bookshelf too, Cliff. I've seen
bookshelf. What bookshelf?
I'm sorry, you've modernized. You really want to start with the PDFs, just scroll down the list.
Like, I don't buy modules. Like, literally, I don't buy modules, for my own personal use. And if you listen to our podcast, Steve, you know that I was the anti-module voice when we did the module versus homebrew adventures.
You two can't split the difference down the middle, basically buy the module, but make it more realm specific to your specific.
Jason totally does that, but I don't buy the module for twofold reasons. One, I like custom making everything, and I'm a stingy bastard. I don't want to give them money for stuff that I really don't want to use.
Pet peeve.
That's true.
Pet peeve.
That's true. And I'm surprised that you're you
I'm bringing it up
there.
Yeah, because I've been accused.
And that's weird because, we're talking about stingy GMs, and I don't really consider my friend Jason to be a stingy GM. Maybe that's because I usually play characters that don't wear a lot of armor and beat things to death with my bare hands, so I don't need armor and weapons as much as other people that play the game. So,
well, it was bad during 3.5 era. 3.5 era where everything had a set cost pretty much, and everybody knew how much magic items they need. The 3.5 was really the beginning of Magic Walmart, really. So that's why there were certain things that people just open the book and say, "I want to buy that," and it should be in town, in this big metropolis town, because it says that you can buy it. I had to put some kiboshes on a couple of things, and people got mad, and say that is not available.
I will say,
out of the module.
I will say in Jason's defense that he's gotten much better in later years. Okay. He's grown and evolved, but there were seriously a lot of times when we had to skin everything because he would automatically devalue all of the treasure that we were. If it was supposed to be 50 platinum, we're lucky to get 20 gold. If the horde had 8,000 gold pieces, he'd turn it into copper. And when the module expected the party to have X power level and we were below that, that's not just challenging, that can be a TPK.
Y'all were never below the power level, first of all,
yes,
because
because
y'all were too savvy
we had to
to
rob,
ever be
rape,
that.
and murder everything in our path to keep the power level where we needed to be to complete the mission.
Gee, Steve, how would you know what
Know that.
power level the encounter was supposed to be if you weren't looking at the module
Or the boards.
or the forums?
No.
Okay, moving right along.
No,
Stingy GMs.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
stingy
Steve.
GMs, but I will say this: when you're fighting a creature that is, now mind you, this is old third edition rules. When you're fighting a creature that's supposed to be killable by a +1 weapon or this weapon or that type weapon, and you don't have it because the GM was stingy, that can lead to a TPK.
That's why I play a monk. But moving right along. But before we go from stingy GMs, I will say that stinginess is not limited to the material gains of XP or treasure. You might want to take a good look inside and determine if you're giving your characters enough inspiration. It's an amazing thing that I think that some GMs, and I'm not necessarily going to say Jason's name, that some GMs don't give as much as they could. It's a unique mechanic to third ed, and I mean it's different than something from third ed, but it's been a while since I've had that checked on my character sheet, and I think I actually roleplay pretty well. So sad face.
And we'll be playing tonight, so I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, good. That's the entire reason I agreed to this topic, so just so I can say that. All right, moving right along. So I just did that alone for the entire group, and I think it was a good thing. But that's not a good thing with your table. When you get that one person at the table that says, "I'm gonna do this alone," oh my God.
Yeah.
There's times when that's useful, when you have to have it, but when that is somebody's first answer for everything, Lord have mercy, go play fucking Skyrim and step away from my gaming table.
But I thought I could take the boss by myself. The rest of the party was blocked off or trapped in a pit, and I thought I could do it myself.
Could they? Can they? Fucking kudos.
Well,
But
they didn't. I know what you're talking about.
They did. And it was a TPK.
I mean, there have been times where we've been in games where one character is kind of by theirself just because of like random things that happen, and maybe miraculously they are able to kill the opponent, or they were doing something that seemed rather innocent and they get ambushed. That can happen, but it's when a character specifically makes the choice to go off by themselves and like you're camping at night and you just want to go and scout out around the buildings in the middle of the night in a non-safe area. That was kind of asking for it. And in the middle of the fight, the rogue decides now is the time. Now in the middle of this fight, I'm going to go check the other doors for traps and unlocking doors, and lit a bunch of other orcs into the fight. And that was back in second edition when my friend did that. Oh my God.
Oh, I thought you were talking about third.
No, this was a friend of mine, a different guy. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, we had that happen in the beginning of third.
Every edition.
Yeah.
And then we need to talk about, since we're talking about people trying to be Mr. Everything, we do have some people that are there just to be there and are not really contributing as much as they should. Maybe they don't want to learn about their character's abilities or anything like that.
Oh,
it's a weird thing, and I understand there's some people that are there because they're there because their friends are there or their significant other is there and all that kind of stuff, and they're trying to get into it. And maybe it's not for them, but still, as a DM, you want everybody at the table to feel that they're participating and adding to the adventure experience. So
And
that can
and
be a real issue.
and you're right. You're absolutely right. But and that situation right there can like feed into two other things that are like huge uh, drains on the enjoyment that a lot of people can have at the table. Those people that are only kind of partially invested in the game, they're easy victims to cell phones and being distracted by devices, which
Mhm.
that can happen to anyone,
Yeah,
especially if
guilty.
you're playing on a virtual tabletop. But like that type of thing, you have to manage your time properly and not let the cell phone or device that you're using as part of the gaming process take away from the gaming process. If you're going to play at the game, it's for your enjoyment, but you are contributing to the enjoyment of everyone else. And the other side of that those uninvested people is it's automatically going to provoke another one of the things that I think I know this is a huge hot button thing for Jason, and can
Mhm.
kind of be uh, uh, I can be guilty of this sometimes is an unsolicited
Sometimes.
advisor. Well, like I do, but I reel myself in a lot better than some people.
Yes, that's
Oh,
true.
that's for
That
sure,
is true.
because there have
Yes.
been we called those people the puppet masters. Hi,
Mhm.
you don't know how to play your character effectively, so I'm going to tell you how to do it, whether you like it or not.
Well,
Mhm.
and right, and I know hand puppetry.
Yeah.
Jason will call somebody a muppet in a fucking minute
Yep.
because like
And
they'll
there's
let other people basically come up
run their
with their
character for
ideas
them.
for them.
Mhm.
Right. And there's a divide. There's a difference between coming up with something and like having like a little eureka moment and say, hey, have you been using blank with your character? This is something you should look up. And I admit that's unsolicited advice, but maybe these people aren't refusing to learn their character abilities. Maybe they were just being oblivious to something that they had missed.
Yeah.
And that type of advice is nice, but you go from being an unsolicited advisor to hand puppetry. That's a fucking huge leap because when you think that you sitting here are going to play everybody else on the board game, you might as well be playing like the old school D&D computer games where you were
You
controlling
control the
6
party.
characters, right?
Mhm.
Everybody isn't like that, and the people that do that hand puppetry thing, and I know it drives you crazy, Jason. The people
Mhm.
that do
I think
that,
it drives
that's
everybody
that's
crazy.
see, I
I've let,
I
let me say- let me jump in here. I've come from the school of if you want to play, you have got to learn how to play. The books are there for you to read and understand how the game works. If you are not cracking the book open once at all and relying on somebody like a significant other or somebody else to pretty much do everything for you, why are you there? That's the school I come from.
and see that's my thing, and we're edging toward another topic, which I'll get to here. If you've got a significant other that is invested in playing, but they're not picking everything up, then that's the type of time you do maybe need to advise them and remind them of X, Y, and Z on their character sheet. But you definitely want to stay away from being a hand puppet, letting them be a hand puppet. Maybe let a combat go and just kind of go, oh shit, why aren't they doing so and so? And then, like a turn later, they'll surprise you and they'll remember that they can do so and so, and it's a great moment. And then if they forget after that moment, remind them, and they'll pick it up eventually. If they want to. But the people that are just going to keep their face in a cell phone the whole time, yeah, no amount of hand puppetry makes that person a valid player to sit at your table. And
Hold on. Gotta chime in because right now in a current game that I'm in, I am that person. While
The
it's
cell
other
phone
people's
person?
turns, we have about I am the cell phone person. We have about 8 people in the game,
Well, there's your
and in
problem right
order for
there.
me,
You can stop right there. If there's 8 people playing, if there's 7 people that are players and each person's turn takes 3 or 4 minutes, you're looking at 24 minutes easy in between your turns.
and in order for
12
me
people in my
to
work game.
maintain my zen, in order for me to maintain my zen, I go into my cell phone as opposed to explaining to my fellow spellcaster, why didn't you have your spell prepped? Why didn't you know what you were going to cast before it became your turn? Why did the fighter, not do this, or why is the cleric not using turning undead? I don't want to be the puppet master, so I
Well,
become the cell phone guy.
well, let me. I know this is, and maybe this is a topic that we can throw out later on. Have you guys seen that movie, Robot Jocks or whatever it is, Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, where he has the remote control in his hand and they're Rock'em Sock'em robots?
No,
I
I
heard of
haven't
it.
seen
I
that
haven't
one.
seen it though.
Basically, he's a boxer that's got this rig in his hands, and the robot does what he says.
Okay.
So he's actually doing the fighting, but the robot's the actual thing there in the ring. That is hand puppetry. Going over to someone before their turn, where they've got 25 minutes before it's their turn, and asking them a couple of questions, that's like a coach in a boxing ring getting their person ready for the next round of combat. The coach is not going to step into that ring and take the punches, but they can remind them, watch their southpaw, keep your fucking chin down, do this, do that, let's take care of that cut over your eye. They can fucking be a corner man for them and help them be ready. So don't puppet them, like Jason says, hand puppeting, just don't fucking do it.
Bad. Yep.
But if you can get yourself in a position where you can use your experience to help elevate somebody else's ability to play and enjoy the game, do that. So, yes, unsolicited advice and hand puppetry is bad. But if you can coach somebody, you're not playing the game for them. You're making them better at playing the game. So I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's fine.
All right, moving right along and kind of talking about, we were just talking about like other people being brought to the game with their friends or with their boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other.
Spouses, yep.
Yeah, sometimes when you bring that other person to the game, someone, and usually these are significant others that are not invested, or they can be a significant other that's not even playing.
Right.
But if that person's got someone in their life that's like constantly pulling them away from the game,
deliberately knowing that they're doing that,
and that's when you as players have to kind of be a little socially savvy and maybe breach that conversation with the player and be like, what is going on? You know, it's one thing if they got little tiny kids and they constantly need attention and they need diapers and they need this and they need that. I mean, I've been there. I've had little kids. I've had a son in a high chair flicking Cheerios at me while I've tried to run a role-playing game. I know that struggle. I've had to get up from a game table in the middle of a combat session as the GM and be like, I'm going to change a diaper. I'll be right back. You know, I've been there. I've done that.
Yeah, and that's life, and we understand that life happens, and that's not a pet peeve. The pet peeve is when that person just goes out of their way to disrupt the game for things that they can do themselves, or just to be there and have conversations not relevant to the game. I had one experience like that. I was running the game. This guy, his girl came to the games a couple of times, and at first she was chill. She didn't say much, whatnot. And then when she got, I guess, familiar with the rest of us, she wanted to jump in and have conversations. And while we're in the middle of combat, while I'm trying to read the flavor text, all this kind of stuff, and everybody looking at me like, because I'm GM, I got to handle this situation. Like, what you gonna do about it? So I'm like, okay. So I had to go pull the guy and say, look, we love you, love having you around, love having you in the game, but she's becoming an issue. She's disrupting the game. She's making things longer than it has to be. Nobody wants to really have this long conversations with her about
She's not in the
nothing.
game, but she's
She's not
using
in
it
the game,
as her social outlet.
pretty much. And I said, and I might not have said it in the most tactful way, but I'm like, can you not bring her next time? And he said, sure. But then he jumped out of the game, and I never saw him again, except for a couple other times. But that can happen, and maybe it could have been handled a bit better, but that was me 20 something years ago. And I was not the chill me that you're listening to right now. Everybody listening, everybody talking right now can attest to how I was back then.
Uh-huh.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you so
much.
But yeah, I think that's totally true. That sometimes you just have to have a conversation about those types of things, and a good GM is going to be able to see that and do that, because GMs are there to they're there to provide entertainment. They're there to moderate the story and take things to the next level. Then there's some GMs that are just there to kill their fucking players, and I can't stand that. Hearing stories about a GM that is there and they think that their goal is to kill the players. There's board games like that where one person
where
is
it
there
goes from
to
beyond a GM challenging to being an actual adversary to
right,
the party.
right, and it's. I mean, the GM is in control of the adversaries, but that doesn't make the GM the adversary. It's just such a horrible mindset, and I've run into it several times. Luckily, I never keep track of those people because they're not worth my game time. So, it just drives me crazy. And players that think that their job is to be against the GM are just as bad. Absolutely as bad.
It's a collaborative game where everybody contributes to the story, basically.
True. To sort of fold into what Cliff was talking about, GM being, not just a storyteller and a facilitator, but an actual outright adversary. My pet peeve, when a GM makes not even a bad call, but an unjust call, because the description of the spell, the ability, the feat, the item, whatever it was, he wasn't prepared for it, so he just outright disallows it, even though it's an intrinsic part of the game. Like, okay, fireball should work, or a fly spell would let me do this. Yeah, well, no, it doesn't work now because all of a sudden the room is filled with an anti-magic shell, or well, this spell isn't allowed in the game, or this feat isn't allowed anymore. I've been a player many years, and that is the biggest pet peeve of all, when the spellcaster knows what he can do, he's ready for it, he's prepped, this is his moment, and the DM is just completely disallowing it.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm like, you want to. I don't know. I try not to do that. I hope people don't think I do that. I try to make things challenging for everybody.
In the
And
past, I can recall once or twice. You're not bad. You're not nearly as bad as some of these newbie GMs that are, behind the screen thinking they're God's gift to screen jockeying. But I can still recall once or twice where, okay, this feat would let me affect this creature, even though this creature is supposedly immune. Well, you're disallowing the feat even though you let me take it, and I've had it for 2 levels. You made that call before.
And if Jason's done that, I find it. I think amongst our group of friends, it's pretty well known how much I like to power game and min max. I feel that that's fair. But what I do is, even if I'm trying to bring some homebrew to the game table, I'll bring it up, I'll look through it, find the things that I like, find the things that I think I'm gonna be doing, and I'll sit down with Jason like over lunch, and I will discuss in detail how I'm thinking about pimping my ride. I have the entire beginning of that, conversation with Jason before I try to use the rules to do that cool thing. And we have the conversation then before we get into the middle of combat, and I try to pull that cool stuff like I'm trying to do a magic trick in front of an audience and be like, "Wow." I want to give the GM an opportunity to know what cool thing this is. A, because I don't want it to take away from game time when we're going to do something. Having to go through the rules then and have the conversation then. And B, maybe Jason will have something planned so that it's a cool moment the first time I do so and so. That's the great thing about getting those little aha moments. You get to do it, and it works really cool, and you feel cool about your character's capabilities. But yeah, like having somebody change shit on the fly just because they don't think it works. I gotta say, Steve, sometimes the way people read a spell that they think it should work in way X is not necessarily the way it works. One day we were sitting there at lunch and you were talking about like shape shifting into an incubus or something like that. I was like, that's not even capable in 5th ed. And you were like, it's not? And I was like, no, you can't pick that as one of the things you're going to change into. And that's the hole that some people fall into when it comes to reading the spells. And I'm going to flip the script on you. What pisses me off is when people...
That was also me learning a new edition.
Maybe, but the flip side of this is when people have read something, quote unquote, allegedly read something, and come to the table to try to do it. And I'm like, did you stop reading at a 6th level proficiency? Because that is not what the spell says. The spell does not do blank. And I'm not specifically trying to call you out, Steve, although for being one of the most intelligent people I know, you do this a phenomenally amount of times. Like, people will read a spell, use a spell, and it's like a Nego Montoya. This does not do what you think it does. This does not mean what you think it means. That is a pet peeve of mine. Doesn't matter which side of the GM screen I'm sitting on, because you spend all this time to do the magic. Make sure you know what each spell does, and that is one of the things I do like about like certain casting classes, like a wizard. A wizard can't cast anything that's not in their book. A sorcerer only knows the spells they know. A warlock only knows the spells they know. But those fucking clerics, all they have to do is go, "Kumbaya, my lord," in the morning, and they can learn anything on that fucking spell list. So they can just switch it up, try something brand new. Maybe it's a spell that, as a GM, I read 9 months ago, and I don't remember the exact wording of that fucking spell right now. And then they want to fucking come wheel out Moonbeam, and it's been a while since I've read it. And I was like, damn it, now I got to go back. And that's the kind of stuff that irritates me on the divine side of the world, because they could just, I'll just pick whatever tomorrow morning. And then, it opens up the entire spell list. But on the arcane side of the street, that's what you've got, and that's what you have to clear by the GM. So, I mean, I kind of like it as a GM with my divine people, where like if they're going to add a new thing to the spell book, they have to have learned the prayer at least once. That's my back door, because I was like, oh, you can't just pick it up. You have to learn the specific prayer to add that to your spell list, or the mantra if you're a druid. Because as a GM, that gives you the out to say, nope, sorry, you can't add that to your spell list. And then in your head, you're like, because I haven't reread it yet. So
which edition is that? Because
that's the Clif edition of 5th ed.
I see.
That's what I did to the Eberron campaign we were doing recently, and I told my clerics, I said you can learn anything on this cleric spell list. They're like, I can change it anytime I want. I said, you can change it once you've learned the prayer. She's like, but then I can change it. I said, absolutely. She's like, and I can learn a prayer whenever I need to. I said, yeah, there's no limit on that, but you have to go through the effort of doing it. Like to learn a new one, she'd have to spend a little downtime or something like that. I put that limitation on her, but it's not like learning a new spell or scribing it or anything like a wizard would have to do. And it was a self-limiting thing, which still kept the list totally open, but it enabled us to have a little bit of a guardrail on the open-ended. Woohoo! I'm going to cast whatever the fuck I want. So I liked it. I liked it a lot.
So we've been rambling.
When do we not ramble?
When do we not ramble? But we'd love for you to chime in. Let us know what your pet peeves are. Do you think we're too old school, or do you think some of this stuff is valid points? We have other things we could be talking about, but we'll get into those.
That's right. We'll tune in again in a few weeks, and we'll have a whole list of pet peeves of nouveau gamers. So we'll get right into that. But thank you if you stuck around to the end of our ramblings. We look forward to speaking to you again, and thank you for tuning in to WDND Roleplay Radio.
This has been the Grognard Report.
The Grognard. Okay, I like that one. And we'd love to hear your comments. You can always hit us up on Twitter at WDND Podcast, and you can email us wdndpodcast@gmail.com.
If you like what we're saying, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Feel free to reach out to us and share your ideas and become part of this conversation.
Give us money, please.
I mean, we do have some subscribers. You can subscribe if you wish, and if you feel value in what we're saying and want to drop us a few bucks, hey, we'll take it and we'll appreciate it.
And we appreciate you listening, even if you can't.
All righty, from everybody here at WDND Roleplay Radio, you have a great day. Thanks so much for joining, Steve. We'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye.
Thanks again, guys. Bye.